Okay. Okay, so this is David O'Malley from the Eastern Religions class, History 250, and I'm here with Vimal Sharma.
Hi, I'm Vimal Sharma from Jaipur. It's close to New Delhi in northern India.
Okay, again, apologies, we're doing this in a Starbucks. Vimal's wife is jet lagged after taking a flight home, so this is the only place that we can actually do things. The choice was either Starbucks music or screaming children. We chose Starbucks music. So a little bit, Vimal, I just kind of want to start off with some pretty simple questions. Just tell us maybe a little bit about yourself. You've introduced your name. A little bit about the geography where you're from, and maybe a little bit about your family and where you grew up and how big your family is.
So, as I said, I'm close to from Delhi, so it's in northern India, primarily Hindi-speaking belt. So that's like biggest part of country where you could say things are more or less similar across the board. I'm from Brahmins, which is a priest class in religion, and we literally had a temple. I mean, we were my grandfather with a priest, and for all the surrounding village and all that. So that kind of thing. But I am not the guy who practice very rigorously, or even at all. But yes, do have a good understanding around that. And part of religion itself is it's very individualistic. So it does mean you talk to everybody. Everybody gonna have its own opinion because it's kind of need to be firmed up. And the reason you need to firm this thing up is there's no one book or one scripture which you could rely on. So your knowledge about religion comes from how you see people doing it. Uh, there are some stories like any other, how you see in Greece, so much mythology, same thing with Hinduism, tons and tons of mythology, story you're gonna find, and you build around those your things. But at the end, everybody has to build their own understanding about religion because there's nothing to go for. That's the number one thing. Number two thing, the same point is you practice this alone too. Okay, so you see all the temples, but that's not where you really practice your religion.
Okay.
You practice your religion at your home.
Okay.
Every Hindu family you normally go, and people at least who are practicing, they will always find a small corner in a house where they're gonna have a temple, and it's their temple.
Okay.
That's where they're gonna pray in the morning.
Okay.
That's where they're gonna do things.
Right.
Okay. You go to temple, and generally you will see people don't stand in temple more than 15 minutes. Not 15 is high, 5 minutes. They go, bow down, come back. That's it. Okay.
It's better than the Catholic Church. They can have us in there for hours.
No, 5 minutes, and that too nobody's stopping. I normally go out there just for the lunch. In Queens, I go once in a while. So that's why it is. So that's the one thing. And so you have any other questions?
Yeah, so, and I suppose we should, if it's not obvious by now, we should clear up that we are talking about the Hindu faith that you belong to. And I guess my first question, and an awful lot of what I, try to relate of my own experience with religion, especially coming from Ireland where everyone is essentially Catholic, if not they're Christian. So I guess in your opinion, what is it that makes you Hindu? For me, it was very obvious. I was baptized a Christian, and I would go to church. I mean, but for you yourself, I mean, if you say I am a Hindu, what is it about you and what you do and your rituals and your everyday life or your beliefs you feel that makes you that word Hindu?
Okay, so one thing is true, correct? You're born into it, but at the same time, as I earlier said, this religion is more on a way of life. Okay, it's very generalistic, no dimensions around that. But from ritual standpoint, like if I really talk about baptism, correct? Like when we say, okay, now the kid became a Christian.
Yeah.
There's a similar thing out there in Hinduism as well. Way back traditionally, when a kid go out for schooling, there's a there is a thread which need to be tied together as a ceremony similar to baptism. Um, the kid has to touch uh, the pee from cow literally, okay,
Okay.
and that's being sprayed, sprayed on that or something like that. To so that makes them okay. Now you are practicing Hindu.
Okay.
Before that, you are just born into.
Okay.
Okay, and that was way back. But now today, you have to do it before you get married. So
Okay.
that's always happens.
Right.
So the one thing you have to do is, and it always happens between two kids minimum. It's always been even pairs.
Okay.
So only male does it, not females.
Okay.
Okay. So like when I got married, me and my brother, we both took that thread. Okay. And normally people have to carry on that thread, wearing the thread forever, but of course nobody does in this house. Okay. My grandfather probably was the last one who carried on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
tradition. Okay. So that's what it is.
And on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, again, are there those ongoing rituals or events that again that defines you as a Hindu?
So I mean, if you look about religious uh, festivals type of that, of course, given that tons and tons of gods,
Yeah.
okay, and there are always family gods, and but three main gods and Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh.
Yeah.
So you have lot of festivals, but there are two key festivals in North particularly, Holi and Diwali. Holi is, of course, both of them timed it based on agriculture when all the crops come out and things like that. But Holi is more about primarily only in northern India. You play with colors. It's more a fun thing. But if you look at religious symbolism of that is a fire people lit, and the belief is when you light the fire, all evils in that fire get burned off. Okay. And way back, the mythology story says is, that a kid's, I would say, uncle wanted to kill him, and that's why a lady hold the kid because she was protected from fire, and took that kid in a fire. And what the end happening is, a kid survived and that lady died, though she had a protection from fire, but it's still. So like good is so powerful that any evil protection they will not survive. And same thing, your tradition go on. So that's from. But today, I mean, it's more about the playing with colors. So you
Yeah.
see everybody in a red and black
Yeah,
and blue,
yeah,
all
yeah.
faces. But the bigger festival from Hindu religion is Diwali,
Okay.
festival of light. This is more or less universal in South and North. You could see that. That's more about the similar thing, victory of good over the evil.
Okay.
So that's uh, Ram, which is incarnation of Vishnu,
Okay.
fought against a big evil force named Ram and won that and came back home. And that's why coming back home party is that
Okay.
festival of light. But that's a lot more universal. And again, same thing when crops come back after the rainy season. And so people, it's very much like Christmas. Every house is lighted.
Okay.
People will be having sweets. Go and meet people. One of the biggest thing about both the festival is after the festival, next thing is you have to go and meet everybody, all your family and friends. You go and wish them, whether it's a Holi and Diwali.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now you just briefly touched on gods and obviously the three major ones, but can you also then talk about, for you personally and your background, what are some of the local gods, and what's the relationship in the worship or the hierarchy in the worship of those gods?
So we talk about Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So it's always the way you see that is Brahma is a creator, okay. Vishnu is a protector, okay? And Shiva is destroyer, okay. It does mean before you wanna recreate, you have to burn it off.
Yeah.
But if you look at how people really practice. You could see Brahma is a creator, you would think it'll be a lot bigger, but that's not really the case. You hardly see any Brahma temples.
Okay.
There's very few. I think you could count on hands.
Okay.
Uh, but two big gods which people always talk about, and that's how even religions divided, how like Catholic and Protestants are. You have Vaishnavas, which goes more from Vishnu side. Okay, they follow Vishnu, okay, as their main deity, and then you have Shav, which is follow Shiv as their main deity. And in the north, you'll find people, a lot more people follow Vishnu. And as you go a little bit south, then people follow Shiv. So that's what it is.
In your family, though, was there, or
Again-
your region, were there other deities that were important in your life?
So,
Because I've heard about the multiple gods beyond the
so yes.
beyond the three.
So again, the sense of the mythology, correct? All these gods have their kids, their children.
Yeah. Okay.
You could any given point, these other gods are either reincarnations. Like we had a temple, okay, which my grandfather was priest of. It was Satnarayan, which is reincarnation of Vishnu, correct? Because every god had many reincarnations. But then the big ones is like Ganesh, and you always see that elephant head.
Yeah.
And more or less, you'll find every god will have their own vehicles. So in Ganesh case, his vehicle is a mouse.
Oh yeah.
So you see that. That's interesting. But yeah, Ganesh become very important because it's considered as that you should pray him first before you do anything.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting story about that. Interesting story is like when all these gods, which tons of them, fought against who's the best, correct? These three are top, so there's no competition there. But below three, correct? So all we fought around who's the best. People say, okay, whoever just takes circle around the earth first will be the biggest one, right? So people took their own whatever, birds and all those kind of things they had, correct? Fly on those and go around that. And Ganesh was like sitting out there, of course, what's he gonna do with a mouse? So he go out there, he's the son of Shiv and Parvati. So he just go and circle around them and says, these are my earth. Okay, that's the beginning and that's the end. Because I consider parents as that. And he finished first because that's all he has to do. Says that makes sense. And since then they consider he's the brightest and best person, and that's why anything new you start, people will always worship God.
Okay.
Ganesh.
Yeah.
Okay. As any fresh beginning.
Yeah. I'll remember that before I start my next project.
Yes. Oh, also you will see that. There's you're always gonna have two things. When people start first, they're always gonna write Om. Okay, the word you might have heard, Om. Okay, and second thing is always a prayer to Ganesh.
Okay. So, two other important aspects that we learned about, and I think, I'm leading up to a subject that I think is probably going to be very, very, very personal, and it's different, obviously, for every people and religion. But two things we learned about is karma and dharma. And correct me if I'm wrong, but karma is really the actions, and dharma is the duty
Absolutely
to
right.
act, or the duty to do something or not do something, as the case may be.
Yes.
And what I kind of want to get a concept from you is, even from the dharma part of things and the duty sense, is what is that for you? Where was that defined? How do you define it yourself? And again, how does it drive you, I suppose, through life? Now, as you're a father, obviously, with kids, and where does that come into play?
So, if we look at religion, first, number one thing is how you really know about religion, to be honest, okay? Not having single source of truth, but having tons of scriptures, correct? In reality,
Because obviously you don't have a pope.
you don't have a pope, correct?
Which is what the issue is there.
Yeah, so you have every Tom, Dick, and Harry will be priest, and priests really have no meaning and no power. People
Right.
could ridicule them. Okay, so our most of source of knowledge comes from mythologies, stories, okay, not from the Vedas, which people talk about. Nobody has read Vedas. 99% of people, including me, I never read them. Correct? Just know a little bit about. Uh, so there's two stories. One is Ramayana, and another is the Mahabharata. And these two are the ones which everybody would know, and they have tons of a story within them. Okay, and these stories will like tell you Ram, who was a king, and somebody pointed at one point that in his city, though I'm king, I suppose take care of everybody. One person says, "I'm really hurt because of your wife did something," and Ram said, "It's my duty or my dharma, okay, is to make all people in my empire happy. So if she did wrong, I will let her go." Okay, and they stayed away for a while. So these kind of stories really tells you how big or what level of dharam is really is, and what it means is, generally speaking, is others' well-being is more important, okay, than your own.
Okay.
So you see many a time, like Gandhi, if you look at a freedom fighter, he never let any of his kids take any benefits of his position. Okay, though he helped so many others, but he never helped his own family, and that's why you never see a Gandhi. I mean, the Gandhi which we have is a different one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it is. Dharma means do what's the right thing for others.
Okay.
And if you need to sacrifice, because the concept of sacrifice is very big. Okay, it's humongous out there, and maybe just because of how people were. I mean, sacrifice was important for everybody to live together. And that's what it is. Okay. And the same thing is, okay, you said this is what you're supposed to do, is your dharma, but what you do is your karma. Correct? So if you did to make sure people stayed, you did not made anybody unhappy or cheat on anybody, that's, you didn't do anything wrong, it's your karma. Or you did help somebody out there, that's your karma. But what you're supposed to do is your dharma. Correct? So they kind of hand in glove. Okay. One is telling you what to do, another is telling you what really you've done.
And is that set somewhere? So you look at the dharma about what you're supposed to do, or what your duty is that something that you find personally, or is that something that's handed down from you from your family, or?
No, it's always you find personally. It doesn't mean you, again, I say everything about the religion you learn. Okay. You learn how your parents are doing, what they are doing. That's how it comes in. So that's what it is. The stories, your family, how it preaches, and the reason it is at least till I was growing up. Okay, it's always a very big community involvement. The extended family will meet very often. I mean, this is a drop of the hat. You would like, if I have to celebrate my kid's birthday today, at least there'll be 250 guests, and that's only talking about. You know, I'm saying close enough. Okay.
So it kind of sets itself. The expectations kind of set themselves within that group dynamic.
Exactly, correct.
Right.
So there's so much learning goes on.
Yeah.
Because you're interacting at so high level.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. When I was raised, I was not only being loved by my parents, but my neighbors, and I would go to my college and I will go and touch their feet, which is mark of respect. Go to the families and neighbors and anybody who I see on the board, and I'll touch their feet and say, okay, thanks, and they will do the blessing. So and that's why you learn a lot from around that, rather than reading anything.
I think also when I was growing up, the one we had was out on our block that any parent could pull you up. Any parent could tell you you're doing something wrong.
Exactly.
And it was accepted at that point.
But one of the biggest books from, if you really want to see what your dharma is, there's a one thing which people are always going to read, try to read, at least refer to, is Gita. Okay. And that's one book people say, what you're supposed to do. And this is about Krishna in the middle of war fight, explaining to Arjun, who's a warrior, saying what you're supposed to do. Okay, what it means to be a very pragmatic address to him, and that's everything in Gita. And people may or may not read that, but that's what people refer back to when they
Okay.
say what's supposed to be done.
One of the last things, I think, I know we could talk for hours. We'll run out of disk space, I'm sure, on the phones at some stage. The other thing I want to talk about, which I guess is something now that there's possibly nothing I can relate to in my own upbringing and my life, is the concept of rebirth. Birth and rebirth, and I don't want to, from a sort of a pop culture point of view, we could call it reincarnation here, but I don't want to use my words for it. I kind of like to understand from you, not just, obviously I can read in a book how it fits into the religion and what the theory is, but I guess I'd like to know from you again, and you're a father now, and you've had parents, and you've obviously had relatives who have passed on. What does it mean to you? How do you approach it? How do you think about it? And how do you feel, especially now, like I said, you have another generation who's here. How do you see that it's going to impact you in your life and the way that you think and the way that you act?
So are you talking more about conceptually about rebirth and things like that? How personally impact these things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it something that you think about, or you have thought about?
So that's where, because as I said, I mean, since everybody believes their own, okay, so at this stage of life, I really never see the rebirth as any of the possibility.
Yeah.
Okay, personally, and I don't see that. But yes, from religion standpoint, and most of the people who practice religion will believe in it, is that, and we always been taught one thing is as a God is everywhere. Human life is, or human form is the best form of life God will ever give you. So, because you really did something really good in your past life, so which comes karma, correct? You always saw the methodology. Your karma gonna come back to you. Okay. What it means, we always say that is, what you did in the past gonna affect your present. What you do in the present gonna affect your future. Okay. And Manushya Yoni, that's mean human form, is the best thing you do, then you get it, and after that you go through all the animals and this and that, the 86,000 whatever blood numbers are, you have to go through before you become one. Okay, so that's what it is. The second arcane thing is you always talk about people died, and I remember one time, and I was spent the third day, okay, after somebody's death, and that day priest comes and they read our scripture, okay, and that scripture read to be is very much like over here after a week after somebody dies, and what it says is, yes, your body is just a cloth for a soul. It will change. It's gonna wear a new cloth. And in many a time, long time, it always kind of made sense to me. It's like thinking more scientifically, like, hey, soul is energy, is gonna find some other place for it. It's this. Do I believe now? Probably not. But did I believe a long time? Yes. And 99% people you talk to will believe the same way, that soul is energy if they are scientific. Otherwise, they're gonna soul is a soul, correct? Otherwise, how a person could talk and walk and think. I mean, that's a question. So yes, the soul is just energy, and body is just a clothes. You're gonna change one day.
And I know you and I are young. It's like my wife says, do you believe in heaven? And I say, there's a very good possibility I don't have to answer that right now. I know that it's something I know, obviously, from my grandparents. There was a time when my grandfather died at 90-something, and a very healthy man all the way through, and got to the point where he said he was refusing flu shots because he said, what?